Hello Soundies, welcome to our Sound for Video session. Today is the 27th of August 2023. It's great to have you all here. Hope everyone's doing well, staying cool enough for those in the Northern Hemisphere at least. Let's jump over to our agenda. I'm operating solo today, but I think we're going to have a good time doing a little bit of a, I call it a studio tour. I want to clarify one thing before we get into that. This is a multi-purpose room. It serves at least 3 different purposes. So we live stream here often. This is almost always where we do it. Sometimes we go out into the other open basement area out there, but usually we do the live stream from here. This also serves as where I do all of my video editing, all of my audio mixing for pre-produced videos. It is also the space where I do my day job. I have another desk over here, and we'll take a look at that in just a moment. We didn't have any questions that were submitted ahead of time, so we'll go ahead and jump in. And let me just show you behind the scenes here. So thank you also to Sony for loaning me an FX30, their smallest cinema camera, along with the Sony UWP-D wireless microphone system, and the little digital interface that goes with that called the SMAD. But let's switch over to this here so you can see behind the scenes. So here is the behind the scenes. It may not be perfectly in sync. I didn't sync it with the audio with this camera. We did the sync with the main camera here. But here is the wider view. What I'm going to do in just a moment here is I've got a lavalier microphone hidden just under my shirt here. We'll get the wireless going as well, and we'll do a kind of a closer up look at things here. But let me just explain a few things here. So this is the idea here is just to expose you to other options. It's not to, I'm not here, I actually feel extraordinarily uncomfortable with the whole concept of a flex in terms of the gear that I'm using. That's not the purpose of this. Also, the way that I do it is not the only way. It's not the best way necessarily. It's how I choose to do it. And there are ideas you can take and borrow and steal or whatever. But if it doesn't work for you, that's fine as well. There are lots of different ways to do a live stream in particular, but also to use a shared space for multiple purposes. Christopher says that this shot shows that the Mackie is ginormous. That's not. This is a 10 millimeter lens. So no, it's not. It's very distorted. That's a perspective thing. So it is big, but it's not that big. So, all right. Let's come back here. I'll go ahead and get this hooked up here. So I've got the cable just in my pocket here. What I can tell you while I'm getting this set up is this desk right here is this is the Light and Sound Media Desk. That's the name of the business that I run on the side. Learn Light and Sound, the school, that's what this is all set up for. And this desk usually actually looks quite different. So you'll notice there's no main computer monitor here. The main computer is a Mac Studio, and that monitor is actually, during the live stream, I have to put it over here. And the reason for that is that the key light is right here. And because the key light, I had to put the key light here, the monitor's big. It's a 32-inch monitor. So if I put the light above the monitor, the problem is I started getting, and I can cut back to here, started getting raccoon eyes. So when the light is up too high, what happens is you get these shadows in the top parts of your eyes, and I still have a little bit of one on this eye here, but depending on if I'm facing the light or not. But you can get kind of the hollow eye socket look going if you aren't careful. So what I do, and I haven't solved this problem yet, perhaps there's going to be a way for me to solve this at some point, but I move the monitor over here during the live stream, and then I have to move it back. It's kind of takes about an hour and a half to get set up for most of the streams, and about an hour to break down and put everything back and put everything away. So I'd love to see that shortened, but that's the reality for now. So we'll go back over to the behind the scenes camera here. So that's the first explanation. So that's a purely lighting decision there. Over here, this is a teleprompter and behind it, of course, is the main camera, and that's a Canon C200. And that, if I were making that decision today, I would probably choose a different camera. That camera was originally purchased to do corporate video. In 2019, I think is when I bought it. And then everything shut down and my business changed. I wasn't doing that anymore. So that kind of corporate video for the most part. So we repurposed that camera. So that's probably overkill for a live stream camera, to be entirely honest. A few things that are good about it though, the autofocus, the face tracking autofocus works really nicely. The Canon C70 wasn't out yet when I bought that. I think that if I was going to go with a Canon cinema camera, that would have been a better choice for this. But there are plenty of the Sony cameras do really well, and even the latest generation Panasonic cameras do much better in terms of autofocus. I think autofocus is pretty helpful for live streaming. You can do the old school, just manually focus. If you basically just got this shot through your live stream, that's not a big deal. You can just set focus at the start, and generally things are going to be good. But if you want to move around a little bit more, that makes it more challenging. So there's a little explanation for that. It's a 17-inch teleprompter. It's okay. It's made by a company called Icon. It wasn't cheap, but what I wanted to do was I wanted to try scripting my YouTube videos a little bit more carefully, and it didn't work. I tried for a while, and the way they ended up looking was like this. And now we're going to talk about blah, 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 blah. And it was and my eyes were, I had the teleprompter eyes. It was not a good setup. So I repurposed this, and now it's my live stream teleprompter. So what I put on the screen here is the program feed. So when Danny or Emma are over here switching, I know exactly what's going out on the stream by looking straight into the camera here through the teleprompter. So that's how we're using that right there. Okay, we have a few questions. Let's go ahead and kind of run through these. So first of all, DJ Ware, welcome. Thanks for joining us here today. I don't miss the dog days of August in Texas. Yeah, hang in there, Mark. Here in Daniel's got a nice setup there in Canada. It's 22 Celsius in New Brunswick, 72 Fahrenheit. That sounds pretty nice. All right, Shoji, what's the rectangle light you are using? Is that your only light for the live stream? So, no, it's not. There are actually 4 different lights that we have going here, and I'll walk through each of them. This right here is the Aperture P300C, the Nova. So it's a panel light with a softbox on front of it. That's an expensive light for what it's doing here. It's almost a $2,000 light. Plus, once you add the softbox, it's over $2,000. You can get away with a lot less than that. And in fact, we just put a review up on a light today that was less expensive than that. And there are even some that are less expensive. The thing I like about the Nova is that it has a mode where you can turn the fan off if you don't need a lot of power. And we have the dimmer on this set to 11%. So we're not using a lot of power. And during the winter, that works beautifully when it's a little bit cooler. In the summertime, it gets a little warmer. And if it gets too warm on the light, it has a circuit that actually just flips the fan back on. So every once in a while, that fan does come on. And that can be a little bit problematic. So that's the less than ideal thing about this light. It's not horribly loud, but you can hear it definitely. We'll talk about the other lights in just a minute, but you can obviously see back behind me there is an RGB LED light, and that is one of the Amaran pixel tube lights. We'll show that in a minute. I've got another light for bringing up the ambient levels in the room. That is today actually is the Dracast, the one that I just reviewed on the main channel today. And then we also have a hair light that's up here, and we'll show that in a moment. And that is just to kind of create a little separation here. If I go back to this main, it's very subtle. There's a little light right over here on my head just to create a little more dimension and separate me from the background just a touch more. So those are the lights there. All right. Yanti asks, what are the dimensions of the room? So I can tell you in feet, but we'll have to have someone convert that to meters for me, please. I believe it's about 10 feet by 11 feet. So I'm going to guess that's probably 3 by 3.5 meters-ish, somewhere in there. No, maybe a little bit more. But it's basically a bedroom. It's a spare bedroom down here in our basement. And that's why I have to kind of use it. It's the only part of the basement that's heated during the winter. And we're at 6,000 feet altitude, so we need heat. But that hopefully gives you a little bit of sense. All right, Matt says, I thought your main camera was a C70. When we are filming out, this is actually a good thing here. I can leave the C200 here all the time for the live streams. The C70 is the one that goes out in the other area, the open basement, and that's what most of our YouTube videos that are pre-produced. Is that the right term? Over the top? There are lots of different terms for pre-recorded videos, but the C70 is what we use out there. That way we were not always having to re-rig things and move things around. So this whole camera and teleprompter is mounted on a tripod that just always stays there. So I don't have to mess with that. That would increase the amount of time for setup and breakdown each week pretty dramatically. So we can set that and forget it. All right. All right. McGuire Brannon. Hello, McGuire. Not only do you not have raccoon eyes, but you seem to somehow defy aging on camera. How much of this do you attribute to lifestyle choices versus incredible genetics versus really good lighting? I'd say a third each, maybe. 1/3 each, 33%, 33 1/3% each. Thanks, McGuire. All right, let's do this. Let's go ahead and turn the wireless audio on. I'm going to switch back over to the main camera for just a moment here. Power up the transmitter, and we'll put that on the belt pack back here. I switched to this camera here for now so that you don't see the wobbles when I pick up this camera initially. So let's get this going here. Got power on. Yeah, we're powered on. And I'll mute this main mic in just a moment here. All right, so that should be on. Let me just check the mixer here and make sure that we're getting audio. We are. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and switch over to the wireless lav mic. It will sound different. Be prepared. Here we go. Okay, now you should be hearing me on the lavalier microphone. If you could just give me a thumbs up in the chat here, just want to make sure that's coming through okay, and then we'll switch over to the camera as well. Okay, we're going to go ahead and go for it. I'm going to go grab this other camera and then we'll switch over to it and start doing a... oh, I forgot about the salt lamp. Yes, this is this one. That's the fifth light. That one's purely for vibe. Okay, we're going to go ahead and switch over to camera. We're getting some thumbs up here. Sounds clipped. Okay, let's bring that down. There we go. Hopefully that does not sound clipped there. Lav is clipping, okay. It's not showing clipping on the meter, but how about now? Lav sounds really muffled. Also super muffled. Okay, well, let's see what we can do here. Checking my levels, okay. Check, check, 1, 2, 3. Checking, checking, 1, 2, 3. Ooh, that does sound awful, doesn't it? Checking, 1, 2, 3. Ooh. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, checking, 1, 2. A little clearer. All right, here's an example of a really bad lav job. Apologies for that, friends. We're going to go with it just so we don't lose time here. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to keep going. Thank you for the feedback. We'll do better next time. Okay. All right. Slightly better. Okay. In any case, we're going to go over to the other camera here and let's get started on the mobile tour here. So I'm going to switch to the overhead camera. Here we go. Okay. Got a little bit of wobbling here. Here we go. Okay, so first up, the Mackie DLZ is what we're using as our main audio mixer here. Obviously, right now, I'm running audio through the the Sony FX30 So you're not seeing any audio on the meters here at the moment. But normally I'll have myself here, Danny on, or Emma on the second channel here. Here's our music for the intro and outro, and then our master fader up here. Here, of course, is the monitor. And right now you can see we have the ATEM software control up there. Now, just to kind of give some context here, we talked about probably a couple months ago, and actually it looks like maybe the audio is still clipping. We're getting awfully close. In any case, there, hopefully that's better there. Okay, I prefer physical controls when I can get them. I think that we make fewer mistakes. Humans make fewer mistakes when you have physical controls. And I have a bias for preferring a separate device to manage each thing. And that's why this is kind of perhaps over the top. There is the teleprompter you can see as we look into that. And then of course behind there, we have the Canon C200. This is the Aperture Nova P300C. That's our LED light. Our microphone here is the Earthworks Ethos, and you can see it's on this OC white low profile boom arm. And that connects at the back of the desk there in the corner right back here. But the nice thing about that is I feel like I can get really nice mic positioning without having the microphone really, really prominent in the frame. So that's why I use that. Over here's an iPad with a keyboard that's just running the agenda. So typically when we have questions submitted ahead of time, we'll have a variety of slides there. Today we didn't have any submitted ahead of time, so we just have the main slide. And that's feeding out HDMI into, you can just barely see right back in here, the ATEM Mini Extreme. And that's all of our inputs are filled up, connected to the device here. But because Danny is usually standing over here, or Emma, we have a separate control surface here. Again, physical control surface. Could we just have Emma or Danny running on a laptop with the software control? Of course we could. But I find that this gives us a little bit more flexibility, and then we have the laptop here that is dedicated to the chat, and we key out the chat here. So, for example, we just put Charles's comment up on screen here by using this laptop here. So to answer your question, we do use the ATEM for camera switching. So we're not using Companion, we just use the ATEM. Of course, here's the multi-view monitor. So typically that's turned the other way. Typically, Danny is standing over here, or if it's Emma generally prefers to sit, so she can sit over there. We have the monitor turned so that they can see it, and then we have this, of course, turn a little stand over here so that they can access that. So that's how we typically have that oriented. And then if we have a mic, I have a stand that I put up here and just put the mic in there for them as well. One thing that you didn't see earlier is we do have a headphone amp back here that has two outputs. So I can get the program audio feed out of the ATEM and I bring it into the headphone amplifier, which essentially acts like a splitter, so that we can each listen to that. So you'll notice when I start the streams, typically I have my headphones on, and then just a couple of seconds into the stream I take them off. And the reason for that is that there's a good bit of latency. So I'm hearing the audio go through almost the entire stream signal chain, just to make sure that everything is coming through okay. So that's the idea there. All right, let me just show you some other things here. So here's my day job. I work at Webflow, and this is where I typically work. So this is part of the multi-purpose. And you can see we have JBL monitors for this setup. The other one is kind of hiding behind this monitor at the moment, but typically there. And then with my Zoom calls every day, I'm using this mic here, which is just a Rode NT1. That's the 4th generation, actually, in that particular case. When I get fancy on my live streams, I have a rack of gear here. So here we have the DBX286, we have the Shelford channel, we have our Apollo X6, and we also have a Universal Audio 6176, which is a preamplifier and compressor. So that's what we'll use there. You will note, coming out of the back of the DLZ here, using the left and right main outputs, and those are routed into the camera to its XLR inputs. That way we don't have sync issues when we're on our
main camera. All right. Obviously, you notice there are lots of broadband sound traps throughout the room in the corner there. Another one in the corner here. Another one in the corner back there. If I were to buy them over, I'd probably buy the purple. I like the purple quite a bit. And then we have some on the back wall. Of course, several over here as well. In addition, we have some clouds on the ceiling. So same thing up on the ceiling. That's the hair light right there. That's a little Lupo. What do they call that one? I don't remember which model it is. It's one of the small ones that can go on camera as well, but we just have it on a Gorilla Pod hanging from the ceiling there. This is the DreCast DRX 2000 RGB. This is the light that brings up the ambient level of light in the overall room. So I can tune that. If I want a lower key, I can just drop the dimmer on that. If I want something that's a little bit more high key, I can do that. So, of course, we have the key light, but then if I didn't want it to feel like film noir, I use this over here to get some additional light in the room, a little bit of ambient going there. All right. Just quickly, down on the floor, also for just comfort and to prevent more reflected sound in the room, we do have a rug over a tile floor. And then, as I mentioned before, back here, we have our Amaran tube light. This is an RGB tube light. It's the Amaran PT4C. And the thing that's nice about that is I can plug in the power adapter and keep that plugged in so I'm not running on battery. The ideal for gear that you're using in a live stream is to have things that run on both battery and AC power, so that way if power goes out, you've got a battery to back it up. I'm not redundant enough to actually survive a power outage here, to be honest, on a live stream. But we're moving that direction. I keep this door open just a touch in the summertime so that we get a little bit of air circulation. It's much cooler in the basement than it is here. Okay, with that, I'm going to set the camera down for just a moment here. And let's go ahead and I'm going to take a look in the chat here. I'm just carrying this around here. So it's FX30 with the dual channel receiver up on top for the UWP digital wireless system. And we're just on a little switch pod here, so I can pop that back open and set it up over here. Okay. That should do that. And then let me go ahead and switch back on over to the main microphone.
Okay, you should hear us back on the main microphone. Let's take a look at the chat, see what we've got going in here. Okay. Who's running the teleprompter? So we're just using it as a program feed monitor. So confidence monitor is really what its purpose is. And the purpose of that is so that, especially when when Danny puts the chat comments up on the screen, I can actually be engaged with you by looking at you and read them as well. So it's not so much running a teleprompter in a traditional sense. Instead, it is more of a confidence monitor that I can use while looking straight into camera. All right. Control surface, nice. Real buttons on the switcher are always nice. I completely agree. And the answer for Charles is yeah. We use typically it's Danny at the control surface, or Emma that's at the control surface, and when that gives us a little more flexibility about where she can be relative to the ATEM. And the reason in this particular case, even though they're not that far away, the ATEM is set up underneath a hutch on the desk here, and it has all the inputs, and I just leave those connected for the most part, except for the temporary things. So that the iPad and the MacBook get disconnected each week, but the main camera stays connected. I didn't talk about this yet. When I do the super source as well, which is this right here. So this is actually 3 different things at the same time. I've got the iPad, has the agenda. The main camera is the picture-in-picture of me. And then behind it, I have a Hyperdeck running a looped waveform in the background there. So that always stays connected sort of stays connected. So I have a, this is where it gets really complicated. It depends on which Hyperdeck you have. Some Hyperdecks have HDMI, some only have SDI. The one I have is actually sitting in a rollaway rack out in the basement behind this door back here. So that also has the encoder. So a couple of things. We've talked about this a little bit before, but just for those that haven't heard this before, let me just tell you a little bit about this. So we have we have a fairly complex setup for a home live stream. The Hyperdeck sits out in the other room, and part of the reason for that is the Hyperdecks are extraordinarily noisy. The fans inside of them are ridiculously loud. And even after I got mine, which is a rack mount version, one of the older ones, I actually cracked it open and swapped out the fan they had in there with a Noctua fan, so it would be quieter. And even with the Noctua fan, it's still pretty loud. It's a really small, high RPM fan. So, that's one thing. The other thing is that for reasons that I have never been able to discover, even after sending the ATEM Mini Extreme back to Blackmagic and having them do a variety of tests, I can't use it as an encoder that goes directly out of the Ethernet port to YouTube. It always just fails. The buffer fills up immediately and it fails. And it's probably something to do with my internet service provider is our best guess. As a result, and this is the weird thing, if I use OBS, fine. If I use another hardware encoder, which is what I typically do, I've got a Epiphan Pearl Nano out in the other room, again in that rack, no problem at all. So for those that use the ATEM Mini and can stream directly from it to YouTube or anywhere else, you are so lucky and I'm envious. But unfortunately, we've never been able to get that working. Well, we used to get it. It did work a while ago, and then I think, again, I'm just guessing here that my internet service provider made some sort of configuration change and it doesn't work anymore, but all the other encoders work. Don't know how to explain that, but in any case, that's what we're seeing there. Another thing you'll notice here, I do put temporarily for each live stream, I put a sound blanket down on the desk in front of me just so that we don't get those reflections off the desk, the sound reflections off the desk, hopefully making a slightly better sound experience. What do you use to knock out the comments? Software. So this is a little plugin it's a Chrome extension actually called, let me get the name of it here really quickly. I'm going to turn off the key for just a moment here and get you the name of that. It's called Live Chat Overlay. So what Live Chat Overlay does is it allows you to pop out the chat, and then you can just highlight the one that you want to put on screen, and then you set up a key in the ATEM Mini to key out just the bottom of the screen from the laptop that I'm running that pop-out chat on. And that's what you're seeing. Works really, really nicely. What software to key the chat? I'm using the inbuilt keyer in the ATEM Mini. And so it's just taking the MacBook as a source, and it's keying out everything except for the chat itself on the ATEM Mini. All right. Nice rack. Intense. Fachiri, what water bottle is that? Well, this is my Clean Canteen, spelled with K's. K-L-E-A-N, Canteen. Clean Canteen. Good reminder, stay hydrated. And you'll notice, another reason I like physical controls is that I can fade that out a little bit so you don't have to hear me swallowing. Joe, you made it a little late. I can't handle that much equipment, and that's fine. Again, what I'm saying here is do it the way that works best for you. We're just running through some options here. This is just a peek into how I do it. Take it or leave it. It's not the right way. It's not the best way. It's just the way I do it. And Eric, you're right. Blankets. We've got sound blankets here. Anything you can do to mellow out the room, I think, is a good thing. Won't the purple effect bounce color? Yeah, sure. It sure will. I'm not too worried about that. I still like it. I don't care what anyone says. I'm just kidding, Charles. It would affect the lighting just a little bit. All right. Wow, we got a lot going in the chat. Stefan, do you use the DM240 for monitoring only or also for grading? So this, Stefan is referring to the monitor here. This is the Flanders Scientific DM240. That was purchased for color grading, but we also use it for monitoring. It's just convenient because it's here already, and it's a great monitor, so we use it for both. Eric, a big fan of Dracast. We use them at work. I was impressed. It's my first time working with a Dracast light, and they get the job done nicely without fuss, which I really, really like. Danny's asking, Blackmagic Ultra Studio with CGI overlay AB channels into ATEM switcher? Well, let's just show you exactly what I do here. I'm going to switch over to the Mac. It's nothing too complicated here that we're doing. I'm going to go and pull that out of the way there. So I'm just coming out, if I come into the switcher and I come to our palettes, I'm just using an upstream key. Even just a basic Luma key, and we're filling it with the chat, which is the MacBook that's running the chat pop-out. We do a little masking, a little bit of clip adjustment, set up the flying key to position it, and that's it. That's all we do. And that's hopefully answers your question there, Danny. I'm not super advanced when it comes to using the keyer in the Blackmagic ATEMs, but that's what we're doing there. Okay. Are you just using a long HDMI or a wireless HDMI transmitter? Today, I'm just using a long HDMI cable, but yeah, I actually gave away the wireless transmitter I had. I wasn't using it much, so we sent it on over to someone that could use it more. Jürgen says, pillows and cushions are great sound absorbers, and beach towels. Yeah, those all can help. All of them help a little bit more. Daniela says, most important is, in my mind, for good sound, just the white towel on the desk, so no early reflections. Save you for just $2 the quality of a $3,000 room improvement. It makes a difference, yeah. All right. Audio Buff, thanks for the tour. One day I hope to have a little setup like that to do a better job with remote consultations. This is overkill for that, I'd say, Audio Buff. But in any case, Charles bought some cheap sound blankets from Adorama that were only $10 more than moving blankets. Very nice. I heard that, what's it called? Harbor Freight has some as well that are fairly heavy and very affordable, so they're worth checking out as well. All right. Thank you for showing us behind the scene. You got it. So ATEM is like a headless computer. No, not so much. Well, at least I don't think of it in those terms. It's yeah, I guess you could think of it in those terms. It's a computer that if you had a computer set up with a lot of different HDMI inputs and basically capture cards, then yeah, I think you could think of it in those terms. Yeah, it does a lot of different things. Matt says, I will not complain about my 14 by 14 foot office ever again. It's just an office. I have a curtain that I can draw for Zoom calls. I have several small lights and sound blankets. That's another, I'm glad you brought that up. You can see also back here, we have some blackout curtains. So I've got a window on this side of the room and another window over on this side. That actually turns out to be a really nice thing for multi-purpose. So normally when I'm doing my day job and I have a Zoom call, I don't want to have a complex setup in that case. And it's what I do instead is I don't use any of the lights. I actually just take the blackout curtains and kind of tune how far open they are to tune in the look that I want. And it works pretty nicely. So that way I'm not generating extra heat. I'm not using electricity for it. And that works really, really nicely. Even on cloudy days, it seems to do. I can get enough light in to get that all working right. So Linda asks, which Hyperdeck do you have? I don't know the model to be honest. It's an old one they don't make anymore. It's a rack mount. It has the two SSD caddies in it. It was the one that didn't have any sort of, I don't know if they do this now yet or not, but it didn't have any sort of converters. Ah, can you hear that? The fan in the light just went on. I do have a noise gate, so maybe you're not hearing it, but that just went on. That just went on, so that's interesting there. All right, let's see what we have here. So sorry, Linda, they don't make the one I have anymore. If I were to buy a new one now, I'd go for one of the probably the smaller ones. Yeah, probably one of the smaller ones. All right, McGuire says, what's your favorite piece of cheap gear in your studio? Something others might spend a lot of money on that you're proud to have creatively solved for less or even free. I think the blackout curtains are probably my favorite piece of cheap studio gear for lighting. Again, for the work calls, McGuire and I work together, and you get to see me, McGuire, on the calls every day. And it's these blackout curtains that tune the lighting for me. And it's just a matter of figuring out, as the sun moves through the sky, I can change. I have it pretty well dialed in as to which curtains need to be open and how much, and so on and so forth. So I think it's those curtains that makes a big difference, and it probably also makes a difference in terms of reflections as well, sound reflections. So it's a pretty nice. I don't know, they're not free, but they weren't horribly expensive either. So it's just a matter of getting the right size for the windows. Really happy with those. Does anyone use a Hyperdeck Studio HD Plus? So the one I have is actually. It is 4K capable up to 30 frames per second, I think. So it's a little bit of an older one. And Danny is an Epiphan Pearl fan. I'm with you, Danny. That's the encoder I use, the Nano, actually, in our case. Linda's looking for an SD card recommendation. I've had good luck with the SanDisks in the past, although it looks like Western Digital bought them. Some of their external SSDs are having a lot of trouble. In fact, right before the stream, I was trying to set up a warranty exchange for, they look like this. This is an older one. Seen these before? Oh, let me switch to the other camera. A lot of people have been reporting, let's see if we can get it to focus here. I don't know if it'll focus because it sees my face still. But these little SanDisk portable SSDs, the older ones have been fantastic, but the latest generation 4 terabyte versions have been a nightmare. A lot of people have been having trouble with those. But I've still had good luck with the SD cards. All of their SD cards. DJ Ware has that Hyperdeck Studio HD Plus. All right. And DJ Ware uses Crucial X6 drives, not SD cards. All right. We have the Clean Canteen gang. Cheers, Vachuri. All right. Looks like Homesick Mac has the same bottle. All right. Christian says, what? No SM7B? Inconceivable. I am sorry to break your heart like that, but I do have an SM7B. It's just not the best fit for my voice. So I use Earthworks Ethos. I think it's a better fit for me. All right. Let's see here. Looks like we have lots of talking about cards and drives, so I'll let you all have that conversation. All right. Just scouring through the chat here to see what we have. Oh, Daniel asks a good question. What camera setup would you choose now for live streams instead of the C200 if you were starting out now? Great question. I don't know for sure, but let me give a context for why I bought a C200 in 2019. It was an old camera even then. I had a bunch of Canon glass already, so I'd been using the Blackmagic, the Pocket 6K, and before that I had an Ursa Mini Pro, so I already was invested in Canon glass, the Canon is it the EF lenses? I can't remember whatever that system is called, but that's why I ended up going with a Canon. In that context, a Canon C70 would make more sense for live streaming for my setup. But I'm intrigued by these Sony cameras, and the new, especially the FX30 and the FX3 look really, really interesting to me. Again, this is my first time playing with it. And the only problem, of course, is that I'd have to invest in all new lenses, and I don't want to do adapters. Like for me, the autofocus, the face tracking autofocus is really important. So if I wasn't invested in a bunch of lenses, then I would probably look at the Sony first. But because I looked at Canon. So probably today, if I had to buy another one, I'd buy a Canon C70 probably. Just because I know it really well. It produces a very nice picture, clean images, and the color works nicely for what I'm doing. So it's a great question, and I think context is super important there for what makes sense. All right, Bartek asks, or actually says, I make a screen recording in Camtasia with the setup of a Canon R RODECaster ATEM to sync properly the video and audio. Yeah, that's a nice little setup there. And then the question is it better to feed audio from RODECaster using monitor outputs to ATEM via mic 1 as a line in, or is it better to feed Canon R mini jack 3.5 millimeter, both using a specific cable there? I think you'd need to test that. I've never worked with the Canon R to know how clean its audio input is, but I'm guessing the ATEM doesn't have the cleanest inputs, although when you do it line in, it's okay. If you're going in Camtasia, you could also just run it USB from the RODECaster directly into the computer. So you have a variety of options there. If you're worried about clean audio, then I would just go straight in USB and then adjust the sync in post if you have to. Or you could go through OBS as well to adjust the sync in real time, so you wouldn't have to do it in post as well. So if that makes sense, so you would bring your audio into your computer via USB. You would bring the camera into your computer on the ATEM. In Camtasia, and then you would bring those together in OBS, apply the audio offset, and then feed that out to Camtasia. Camtasia should be able to recognize that, I would think. So that's what I would do, or at least try, and see how that goes. But okay, Charles asks, can you walk us through your sound chain? Does your sound go into the ATEM to stream or get integrated into another part of the chain? Okay, so I have the microphone that runs into the ATEM. Let's go back to the overhead camera here, or the behind the scenes here. I'm going to go ahead and turn that off for now. Microphone comes into the Mackie DLZ. Mackie DLZ main outputs go into the Canon C200. Canon C200 comes out HDMI, where it's already combined the audio and the video into the ATEM, and then the ATEM goes to the Epiphan Pearl Nano to get encoded and sent to YouTube. So that's the entire audio signal chain. There are other inputs as well. So when I was doing the mobile camera here, I was sending audio directly to that camera because the receiver, the wireless receiver, was sitting right on top of the camera. And then that fed into that camera, and then that was going HDMI into the ATEM. So if I do a demonstration on the computer, obviously the sound is coming from the computer. So all the sound eventually gets to the ATEM, and then from there out to the Epiphan for encoding. Okay. Jürgen says, cheap curtains, just be careful around hot lights. Agreed. I'm not using any hot lights in here. Just LEDs. All of the LEDs run cool enough that it's not a fire hazard, thankfully. But yes, be careful if you are doing any sort of hot lights around curtains. Be very, very careful. All right. Wow, this is lots going on here. Let me just catch up here. Oh, well, I'm way behind. Diesel 10, the key light. How do you keep it from blinding you? I don't look at it. It's off 45 degrees, so I'm looking here. It's over here. So that's the main way I keep it from blinding me, is keep it off to one side. Homesick Mac, enjoying your Earthworks ethos. Got me the SR314 for both studio and live work as a musician. Amazing mics. I completely agree. They're fantastic. I really like them. All right. Edwin asks, do you use a Stream Deck? Which one do you use, and does it help? I actually have one sitting over there. I use it for work mostly to just automate things. I don't use it on the streams. If I were using, I think you can set it up with a companion app. I think you can also, if you're using OBS, obviously you can set it up to do things there. I think for people that are using a software encoder like OBS, it makes a lot of sense. Makes things a lot easier. There may be some way to integrate it with the ATEM, I'm not sure, but we're using the control surface for the ATEM. The Mackie DLZ is the audio control surface. So in our case, we don't use it for the live streams, but it's over there. If I find a way to integrate it and it will make our lives easier, we'll certainly do it. Matt says, I never trust ATEM encoders and use Epiphan Pearl Nano as well. For ATEM drives, I use OWC Envoy Pro SSD HD. I had 10 and they are rock solid. Yeah, I have. I've had some of the. In fact, I think that when we go to the super source here, the background waveform that you see there is actually running off of a OWC Envoy SSD drive as well in the Hyperdeck. So that's how we're doing things there as well. All right. If there's time, my wife and I are planning some duet-style narrative podcasts, swapping dialogue and narrations. Is there a question that came with that I missed earlier? I'm so sorry if I did. Or maybe it's coming. Here we go. We want to read together to increase liveliness of the readings. Should we use one figure 8 mic or two mics like SM7Bs? We're going to rent, and I could rent a Lewitt LCT 441, for example. Oh, good question. If you're going to use something that has a figure of 8, a condenser with a figure of 8, I think you're going to need to make sure your room sounds pretty good. So having up, again, whatever you need to do to manage reflected sound, I think that could work for sure, where one of you stand on either side. Surprisingly, that's done in some music recordings and even in voiceover in some cases, I think. But I think you're going to have to test it to be 100% sure. And it depends if you don't want to, you're going to have to mix as well. If one of you has a voice that's substantially louder than the other, that makes it tricky if you're doing it with a single mic with a figure 8 polar pattern. So that might be a case for something like the SM7Bs. If you're renting and you can, I would test out the figure 8 first and see how that goes, if you can. All right. Vachiri asks, did you hear about Rode Wireless Pro? Do you have any preemptive thoughts about it? The time code seems interesting. Yeah, I think they're just taking that system forward in a pretty interesting way. I'm interested to see it. So we are going to try to get our hands on a kit and try it all out. I love you guys, Linda. All good ideas here, my personal advisory committee. That's what we're hoping to build here, is a good little community where we can help each other out. Camille says, the preamps for the microphone of the ATEM Mini is not excellent. Does this apply to the line level input? It's not as much to the line input, but I have had it introduce plenty of hiss as well. So I try to avoid it when I can. Sometimes I've played the intro and outro music into that input, but beyond that, I generally avoid it. It's just not, it's not great. It's too noisy. Too noisy for my taste. Can you make it work? Probably, but it's not my first choice. All right. Lots of talk about drives. Continuing on here. All right. Mark notes, line level bypasses a preamp. That's true. I've still found that the circuitry, even at line level, still can be a little bit noisy. Great question from Jonathan. Are you using any SDI in this setup? And the answer is yes. So for the longer runs, so when I have to get stuff from out there in the other room, so from the Hyperdeck, we're running SDI into here, and then we're using a decimator cross converter to get it to HDMI and then bring it into the ATEM. Also, to get the video out, I go out of the HDMI output on the ATEM, the program out, or have it set up as a program out. That goes into one of the decimator cross converters, SDI, out to the other room and into the Epiphan Pearl Nano. So I didn't want to mess with HDMI cables that long. It would have been probably at least a 25 foot, maybe even 30 foot run. And I just didn't want to mess with it. So we went ahead and used SDI, and I already had the converters anyway. So that's how we did that. All right. Idea with OBS sounds great. I'd love to see in Camtasia 2024 audio and video sync option. That would be nice. Camtasia added something like that. Nice app. All right. Let's see here. Still lots of talk about drives. Yes, Mark, the input on the ATEM minis can be switched to line level. Yes, they can be. Homesick Mac. I'm on Ecamm for live streaming, but still using ATEM Mini Pro for one of my 3 cameras. M1 Mac Mini can't accept 3 cam links at once, and I need 3 cameras on screen at all times. There you go. Looks like you got a good setup there. Daniela, do you ever use Loopback, special, for example, to mix DAW or synths inside your stream? I know you do not have a MIDI keyboard, but will be nice to demonstrate such in a stream. We've covered various apps that do Loopback, yes. We don't use them typically here, but we have certainly done that before, and we can cover that again as well. All right. Oh, I don't know if you say Sergey, my RME babyface is dying on me. Any suggestions on a daily driver in terms of audio interface? Well, if you're coming from a Fireface, or this is a babyface, RME babyface. I use the Apollo. I really like the Apollo. There's an Apollo Solo. It's pretty nice. I think RME's still making interfaces too. If you really liked your babyface, that I'd look there as well. Motu makes some decent ones. Even the M2, which is cheap, but pretty good in terms of audio quality. So lots of different options out there. The one I use as a daily driver is the Apollo Solo. All right. What would you do for a handheld wireless mic if you needed to do one? Good question. I haven't needed to do one, so depends on the wireless system you're using. So if there's a plug-on transmitter, the Sony UWP-D system, for example, has both a wireless mic option, or it has a plug-on transmitter, and you can choose whatever microphone you like. So I would probably use the plug-on transmitter, to be honest, and I would use a mic that's made specifically for interviews, like a Rode Reporter or a Electro Voice. I've forgotten the model number now. They have a specific one. It's actually, I believe it's actually omnidirectional, but it's a dynamic mic, and that works pretty nicely as well. Okay. Have you had a chance to use one of the RODECasters? Yes. Yes. I guess that could work. I don't use it as a daily interface, but if you've got the space for it. I'm using right here the Mackie DLZ, which I prefer, but I don't use that as a daily driver either. But you could. Yeah, you could. I think just that setting up the playback is, you just need to understand how to do routing, and you'll be fine. You'll be able to do it. Okay, Prison Junkie, if you were going to build a dock interview wireless audio package for a Sony shooter, FX3 and A7 IV, where would you start? I currently use the FX3 handle with two Rode Go 2 Zoom H4n 8T875R. And it's continued down below somewhere. Time code and reliability are requirements. Sony UWP-D27 and the Tentacle Sync products coupled with a MixPre 3 or 6 or Zoom F8N Pro are the products which interest me the most. Question, why would you use a MixPre at all if you can go directly into your camera with the UWP-D27 and the SMAD interface? If you still need to mix, that makes sense. But yeah. Those, I mean, I have no issues with any of those products. The UWP D27 is what I'm in the process of reviewing right now. We should have a review up soon. Been pretty impressed with it. If you put the microphone in the right place, it sounds pretty good. If you put it right here under your shirt and then you run it right up against a Earthworks Ethos and you're trying to EQ your own voice, it may not work quite as well. So anyway. All right. Hopefully that helps a little bit. But yeah, I like the Sony wireless system is good. All right. Let's get back up. All right. Christopher says the time code on the Rode Wireless Pro, I think it's called the Rode Wireless Pro, is actually kind of a hack. No jam, sounds like no time code, no temperature compensated crystal oscillator, only meant to keep the transmitters in sync with the receiver. Okay. Again, I haven't looked at it yet, so. All right. Loud and Clear asks, what are those Gobos you have behind you? Are they homemade? I assume you're talking about the broadband bass traps. So these are not homemade. I got mine from GIK Acoustics. For those that are DIYers, you could probably make your own. They use some, I don't remember what they have some, I think, patented or trademarked material that they're using inside. But be careful about, if you do DIY it, rock wool can be good, but a lot of times there's, you just need to be careful and make sure you cover them so that you're not breathing anything that's coming off of those or any insulation products as well. So just be careful about that. But yeah, they've served me well. I've had them for a number of years now. Charles asks, if I go into my Canon C100 for my RODECaster, should I go out on 2 channels? So 1/4 left and right into XLRs, left and right into the C100's XLR inputs. That's what I would do. However, on the RODECaster Pro 2, I've had problems getting true line level outputs out of those monitor outs. I actually reported it to Rode, and they, last I heard, were looking into addressing that issue on the RODECaster Pro 2. So it wasn't really a line level output. So, but yeah, that's the general idea. If you're just doing dialogue and you're just using a single channel or just a single mic, you probably could just do one. If you wanted to simplify things a little bit, just have one cable, assuming you're going to do some sort of post-processing on that. So you have options there. In our case, we actually are running out both left and right because I play music at the start and the end, and that is stereo music. So we do that. Okay. Just scouring through the chat here. Jonathan Scruggs, please get a live interview set up with Doug Johnson. Okay, I'll give it a try. Random, which light are you using for the live stream? So we covered that a little earlier. This is the Aperture P300C, the Nova. Overkill. Back here, we're using a Dracast just so you can see how distorted this is, look at my hand in terms of the lens. So that's why it's making the Mackie look so enormous. That's a Dracast DRX 2000 RGB light. That's bringing up the ambient levels. And then we have a tube light back here, Amaran PT4C, I think it's called. We also have a Lupo hair light that's putting hair on top of my head a little bit. And then, of course, we have my favorite light of the whole setup right here is this salt lamp. I have no idea who the brand is. Danny bought that for me, and I love it. All right. All right, if you were going all out with audio for a live stream with multiple audio feeds, would it make sense to use Dante? Dante provides the ability for many receivers to receive from the same sender. Okay, there's a lot there, Daniel. Yes, possibly. Dante depends on. So first of all, I don't know if you're just so everyone's clear. Dante I don't think last I checked, Dante is not something you can do over the internet. It's something you can do on a local area network. So if you have your people spread out within a space, and you want to send their audio over a network, because it's easier to do that, then Dante makes perfect sense. Yes, absolutely. I'm not sure, obviously there's a lot of context there that would be necessary to get it all sorted out, but yeah, perfectly legitimate. I don't know if it would make, yeah, anyway, there's some thoughts there. Okay, for 4K 60 frames per second streaming, would you mind suggesting a capture card? I don't know of, I'm not a gamer, so I don't do 4K 60 streaming, and so I'm not familiar with any capture cards that do the full 4K 60p, as far as I know. ATEM definitely doesn't. I don't know if probably look at Elgato would be probably the place I'd start. But I would also check out the EPOS VOX channel on YouTube. He looks at and reviews a ton of capture cards, so that's probably where I'd look for that. Christopher has some insights here. I'm on Dante myself, 15 devices on the network at all times, including a bunch of AV/IO USB adapters to get various phones into the network. So there you go. If you have a lot that you have to put together, then that could be a good way to do it. Oh, good. Homesick Mac can recommend for the question about the audio interface, Arturia Mini Fuse 4. Affordable. I think you mean deadly silent or very, very silent for my needs in the studio and for streaming. All right. Just again, catching up here. Is the Mackie DLZ digital? Yeah, so you can connect it to your computer via USB. So it definitely digitizes the audio. There are also analog outputs, so that's what we're running to the Canon C200. So it does both. Serge, okay. Apologies, Serge. Thanks for the pronunciation tip there. Okay, so Daniel says, thanks for the feedback. This is something there's very little coverage of using Dante for a live stream setup. All right. Dr. Noise, instead of going for ProTools, would Resolve's Fairlight be an interesting alternative? My old Apogee Symphony Mark I also needs to be replaced, so instead the Fairlight audio interface. Oh, well, the good news is there's a free version of Resolve, and so you can get in there and start working with Fairlight just to get your hands on it and get a feel for it, and then make a decision for yourself on whether it works well for you. I have not moved to it yet, and the reason I haven't is I still find there are some rough edges here and there. The wonderful thing about Blackmagic is that they seem to be moving forward more quickly than a lot of other software companies with Resolve in general, but even including Fairlight. However, it always feels like beta software to me. So I have not chosen to move over to it just yet. So I would try it first, get the free version, and give it a go for a bit. Okay. Just checking the last few here. We need to wrap it up here. Mark wants to know what's the CRI of the salt lamp. Oh, it's probably 120. I have no idea. CRI is salty, very salty. All right, 95 grams of CRI. Would a Fairlight console interest you in your workflow? I'm not doing a lot of mixing, a ton of mixing, so it's not something I need really in my workflow, to be honest. And then Serge, I've learned so freaking much from your in-depth reviews, so have an expensive beer on my account. Thanks for being there for us self-taughties. Thank you so much, Serge. Really appreciate that support. All right, friends, it's time that we all get out there and get back to work making some great sound. We will talk to you again really, really soon. So take care, everybody.